I traditionally don't want to flip any houses because that's kind of just another job. I'm more looking into long-term wealth, and for me, it's monthly cash flow. So I want to, obviously, I think the best goal for everyone is to be financially free, where your passive income exceeds your monthly debt obligations. And then after that, the goal is to get 2x and 3x and 4x. And then you really have a lot of options.
Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. Join me for some honest, unscripted discussions with other CRNAs who are transforming their financial lives. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today. And now, on with the show. Welcome to another Provider Spotlight episode on the Plan B CRNA podcast. My guest today is a CRNA who is using real estate with a little side of cryptocurrency to create infinite returns for himself. Logan Turner fixes and flips single-family homes for infinite returns, utilizing the Burr method made famous by Bigger Pockets. Logan also uses DeFi as his go-to place for yield, holding all of his cash equivalents there. He's been working part-time in anesthesia for about a year and a half and will transition into retirement over the next 2 to 3 years. Logan, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. I appreciate you having me on.
So let's just start at the beginning. Tell us about your start in real estate and how that kind of coincides with your anesthesia career.
I was always interested in real estate as soon as I, was working as a nurse and realizing that, the money as a W-2 earner after taxes is really not what you think it's going to be. And it's just a really long and hard path to financial freedom that way. And so back in 2009, I did a lot of studying, but I was working as an RN in the ICU, and I knew I was going to go to anesthesia school. So I kind of just accumulated knowledge, but never really bought anything because at that time, I didn't really know what it was like to own a rental. And I didn't really want to take that risk on while I was going to be diving into anesthesia school, knowing that was probably going to be a lot of work. So fast forward, I graduated in 2015. And that time I'm finally like, okay, great. It's time to start buying some real estate. I'm working as a CRNA. I got a little bit of money, time to implement everything I've learned. And the market I went to is actually in West Texas. So I took my first job there as a CRNA. The rent price, the purchase price was like crazy high. So I thought this is an awesome market. Let me dive in. Not kind of knowing what I was doing. You read a lot, you learn a lot, but you still kind of have to do to learn. And so I didn't have the most clarity. So I was like doing everything that I was listening to on the podcast. I was doing yellow letters and postcards and bandit signs at 5 a.m. And here I am, like working as a CRNA making over $200,000, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's crazy. Cause I mean, most people aren't willing to work at what's essentially 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah. And so I thought that that's just what I had to do to find a deal. And, Facebook, marketplace ad or Facebook ads and Google ads. And so I came across my first deal, and this is in, so this is in 2015. So I came across the first deal. It was through a Facebook ad that I put out. And, you create a website and you do all the stuff that you think you're supposed to. Right. And so the deal came across. I was, still kind of like, the house, we were buying it for $32,000 or something really small. And it's a 2-bed, 1-bath house in Odessa, Texas. And so, you do the whole spiel, you talk to the homeowners and you get under contract. And then of course, as we're getting closer to closing, I'm thinking like, man, I don't know if this is a good deal. I don't think I should do it. I'm kind of looking for any excuse to back out of the deal because more out of fear. And the thing that kept me in it was the seller was, kind of relying on me to follow through because he was moving to Colorado. And so that kind of made me say, well, look, whether it's a deal or not, I've already told him I'm going to do it. He's already made plans. I have to do it at this point. So I bought the house. we fix it up. I turn it over to a property manager, just like, you hear and you're supposed to, right? Like, don't manage yourself and build a business. Don't work in the business, work on the business. So I turn it over, and the house just sat for like 4 months. And I thought, man, what are they doing? The pictures they put were crappy. And so then, after kind of, going to some REI groups and doing some more, research, I heard about owner financing. And I thought, well, that's a cool concept. So I took the property back from the property manager. So, we bought it, we fixed it up with some general contractors, and we were about all in it for about 52,000. And so at that point, we were trying to rent it for $900. But anyways, I learned the owner financing strategy, which I thought was pretty cool. And so we sold it on a 10-year note for $100,000, and we took $4,000 down. So we financed $95,000 on a 10-year note, which paid about $1,250 a month in principal and interest. At the time, I thought that was really cool because my student loans were on a 10-year note as well. They were $116,000, and I was paying like $800 or $900. So I thought, wow, I kind of just turned this $52,000 to pay off my $116,000, plus I got a little extra cash in my pocket. So I thought, well, that's a cool strategy. And then going from there, I kind of did more research, did more studying, kept buying properties off market where they were pretty severely distressed. So they required like a pretty major rehab. And I thought that was just the way you had to do it.
Now, how did you find the relationships with these contractors and all these folks that, are doing this work? Because I mean, you're working full time as a CRNA. So I mean, how much of the work are you doing yourself, or what did that look like in the beginning? Do you happen to be handy? I'm not. Yeah, no.
So I've done over 60 remodels, and probably on 52 of them, I haven't seen them in person. So I've never been to the physical house on these, and I've done the rehabs from 1,000+ miles away. So you definitely don't need to be there. And in fact, when I was there for the first house, it's your first house. You kind of go a little bit cheap. You don't realize that things just cost money. And if the numbers make sense, it's a good deal. And sometimes you overpay for things, but that's just kind of the process because there's a headache factor and a time factor and et cetera. So like on the first house, I looked around, found a general contractor through an REI group. Didn't really get all the references like you're supposed to, didn't really verify the work. The contractor was okay, but probably like not what I would pick now. So they quoted me, so they did some of the work, like a roof and some siding. And then for like the interior, they're quoting me like $3,000 to paint it. And of course, because I lived next to the house at the beginning, I moved like, a year later, I moved to San Diego. So I was, 2,000 miles away. But when I lived there, I thought, man, I'm not going to pay this price to paint the inside. I could go buy a professional gun for $400 and spray it myself. Right. And so there I was, after work in my scrubs, taping off the house. I paid someone like $10 to help, tape and spraying the house and wearing the gas mask and all this stuff, and after I was done the first house, I realized, okay, like I'm not handy. I did an okay job, but really it wasn't a good job and I shouldn't be doing this. So you feel like you're a little bit cheap, a little bit frugal on the first one. You have a kind of a scarcity mentality and you think like, I need to save every penny I can so I can make this a deal. But really you figure out the more you do it, you realize those numbers you got to calculate at the beginning before you make the purchase. And then just say, some things will run over and that's just the nature. Some things will be less, some will be over. It all kind of evens out at the end. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing any of the rehab yourself unless you love doing it and you're not trying to build a business.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, and just you talking about doing this from 1,000 miles away for most of the homes that you've done, I had no idea about that. That's something that, you hear about from other people sometimes, but most people who are doing those kinds of real fix and flips, they're doing it, in their hometowns or places they can at least drive to. So that's a really remarkable thing that you've got set up. So kudos to you, man. That's awesome. So, you mentioned using your own money for that first one. How did you transition? I mean, obviously you're not made of money. You can't do that for for 60 homes. How did you transition away from using your own money to using other people's money?
Yeah, exactly. Because at some point you realize, like, okay, I only have so much capital. Even as a high income earner, there's only so much dollars at the end of the day. So there's really like two main options, or three main options, but really you need to find other people's money and bring people in on the deal. And so, like, it's like a pizza pie, right? You can keep the whole pizza for yourself, or you can actually shave off some of those slices to other people by bringing others in the deal. And that's what we do, right? So I don't market the house, like I don't find these off market deals myself. Other people called wholesalers do that and bring me the houses, so they get a little cut, right? They may get five or $10,000 by finding the deal. I bring in general contractors to do the labor, right, and to find all the different subspecialties, and then they get a little cut. And then I also bring in private lenders who want to get a return where they actually have collateral against it, so they get a first lien position on the house. They usually lend in like a 70% LTV, maybe 60%, so they're in a safe spot, and they're getting anywhere from 8 to 10% interest payments, and the payments start 30 days after the note is created. So they get a guarantee from the business, and then they get a first lien position on the property, and they're lending in a 60, maybe 70% loan to value. So if they had to, which no one's ever had to foreclose, but if they had to, I got hit by a car and they had to take the property back, right? They're in a good spot where they could just take it to any place and say, hey, I got a property, I need to sell it at 75 cents on the dollar. And they should be able to liquidate that note in no time. And so, yeah, so bringing in other people into the investments has helped me grow. It's helped other people make a good return as well. If they want to diversify outside of the stock market, or if they don't want to be active investors themselves, because they'd rather just earn the money at their job and then put it to use. It's a good way to be hands off, make a good return, and you're getting interest payments every month. So, if they really want, they could just blow that interest payment because they're going to get the principal back at the end of the day, 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned 6 to 12 months. So that's generally about how long your rehab takes, is about 6 months or so. Or
yeah, it could take anywhere for like 2 to 3 months to do the actual rehab. Sometimes they're 6 months, and that's usually a little bit of a stranger situation if there's permits or something. But then after that, we go to the lender, and so the kind of the general process is we find an off market deal. I'll buy it, we'll rehab it up. I'll bring in the private lender along the way. And then after it's fixed up, I'll hand it over to my property manager. They'll get the property leased. So now I have a property that's fixed up. It has a first lien debt on there from a private lender, and the property's rented and it's worth significantly higher. We'll go to the lender. They'll do usually a BPO, which is a broker priced opinion, versus a full appraisal. And this is like a local commercial lender. They'll look at the property. They'll look at what it's renting for, run some calculations, and they'll loan me 80% of the value. So typically, when I find these deals, I'm kind of reverse calculating. So we talk about like infinite returns. The way that I try to do this is, it's basically you leverage other people, especially if you're not there in the market, right? There's multiple ways to do things, but really there's two main ways. You can either go do everything yourself and be a one-man shop, or you can build a team and leverage other people, and now you're actually running a business. So there's only so much time in a day, and you can only get stretched so far. So like you can't grow large enough if it's just yourself. So what I do is I network with other wholesalers who will bring me off-market deals. And so once you get 3 or 4 wholesalers and they're bringing you deals, so say Johnny shoots me a text, hey, I got this new house, are you interested? I'll look at the price, I'll look at the pictures. I have a base knowledge of what it's worth and what I think it'll rent for. But even if I didn't, you reverse calculate everything. So if they're asking, say, $60,000 for this 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and I don't know anything about the house because I'm new to the market. If I've already found a great property manager or a great realtor through networking, and some good general contractors, I can just reverse engineer the numbers. So I take it to my realtor or my broker and I say, hey, what would this house sell for if we fixed it up? They run some comps. They'll tell you, oh, the house would sell for $140,000 based on what I'm seeing. Okay, cool. I write down 140. I go to my property manager and say, hey, what would this house rent for if we get it fixed up, with, granite, et cetera. And they say, okay, well, it'll rent for $1,500. I say, okay, cool. So I write that number down. Then I go to my contractor and I say, hey, can you go to this house and give me a bid to fix up the property? They'll go out, I'll connect them with the wholesaler. They'll find a time. They'll go out there. They'll come back and say, yeah, we could rehab that property for, $50,000. So now I can just reverse engineer my numbers. The purchase price is 60. The rehab is 50. You can calculate that and see what percent of that is for, say, 140, right?
Mm-hmm.
And typically, if you can get all in on the property less than 80%, then essentially you're going to have an infinite return, because what ends up happening is, say if I'm all in for 75%, I go to the bank and they say, yeah, it appraises for 140 and we can give you a loan for, say, 118. I don't have a calculator, but whatever the number ends up being.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're all in for 110, you've actually received more money than you put in. So you actually made money to own the
Mm-hmm.
house. So that's kind of how I start from everything. And if you're going to keep it as a rental, the second calculation is you need to see if it cash flows as a rental. So then you throw in your numbers at, okay, well, they're going to do a loan at 118,000. The terms are 20 years at 5%. And then you figure out what the principal interest is. You figure out what the insurance cost is and what the taxes are. And then you throw in a little bit for property manager and maintenance. And essentially I look for the numbers as like, hey, I want to cash flow, $200, and have no money in the deal. And then, what ends up happening is when the deal's all said and done, and we'll just leave the private lender out for a second. When it's all said and done is I refinance the property, I get all my money back, right? So now I have $110,000, $115,000 back. I got a property with 20% equity, which is like $30,000 in this case. It cash flows $200 a month, and I'm paying down, say, $300 a month in debt. So then what I do is I take that same ball of cash and then I go do another property. Mm-hmm. And then 6 months later, I get the money back and I do another one. And obviously you can do multiple at a time if you have that kind of capital and deal flow, and the market's strong enough for it.
So speaking of markets, that's a perfect segue. So what markets are you actually working in right now? Because you mentioned to me that you're living in Texas. Are you utilizing primarily Texas markets, or are you looking, at other areas around the country right now?
Yeah. So currently, most of my portfolio is out in Midland and Odessa, and I'm living in Tyler, Texas, and I have a couple short-term rentals here. So we have 3 of them, and I've done a couple of fix and flips here locally, but I'm still buying out in Midland and Odessa because once you build up the team, and not official team members, but right, you build up your network. The deals still keep coming in, even though I'm not actively looking. They'll bring me a deal, and so sometimes there's a deal that's too good to pass. Even if I don't want any more long-term rentals there, I'll still go ahead and buy out there, because once you get this as a place, it may only take you 10 hours total of my time to do a full transaction.
And how many of those homes have you kept for your own portfolio? How many have you offloaded? What goes into that process for you?
Yeah, I kind of look at the market in general. I traditionally don't want to flip any houses because that's kind of just another job. I'm more looking into long-term wealth, and for me, it's monthly cash flow. So I want to, obviously, I think the best goal for everyone is to be financially free, where your passive income exceeds your monthly debt obligations. And then after that, the goal is to get 2x and 3x and 4x. Mm-hmm. And then you really have a lot of options. Flipping a house, like if you made $30,000, that's cool. You're going to pay maybe 20, 30% tax on there. And then you're just left with capital, which you now have to go redeploy somewhere else. So if you want to invest, so some people I know what they'll do is they'll flip and then they'll put money in larger syndication deals. And that's kind of their business strategy is mm-hmm. They don't have the acumen to do the big deals themselves, but they want exposure to apartments or self-storage. So they'll flip, take that 30, 50K and go put it in an LP deal. So, but for me, my goal is not to just flip simply just to have extra cash. It's just I'm all about cash flow.
I love that. Yeah. Cash flow is king, man. That's kind of the way I operate is I figured out from, the cash flow quadrant and whatnot that, I want to focus on buying those assets and holding on to those assets. And, anything that puts money in your pocket's an asset. Anything that's taking money away, is technically a liability. People you can do fancy accounting and whatnot, but in very simple terms, if you can look at things from that perspective, things putting money in your pocket are good for cash flow, man. So yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Now you mentioned that you're only working 2 days a week now. You're looking to transition into a retirement here in the next couple of years. So what does that look like from a cash flow perspective? Is that all going to be coming from real estate, or we can shift to that cryptocurrency talk now if you'd like?
Yeah, I mean, so currently I have 55 rental units, and I have 6 of those are owner financed properties where I own the note. So I bought the house, fixed it up, sold it on terms, right? And so I'm basically just acted as a bank. So I get a principal and interest payment on those. So like as a rental property, you could do your calculations and you think, okay, I'm going to get $500 a month, even when you're factoring things like maintenance and capex. But at the end of the day, you may have a unexpected expense, right? So you think that, oh, this $500 a month is yours, but then you have a $6,000 HVAC that, and so really that rent income wasn't really yours. It was the HVAC guys. So while I like rentals better for a lot of reasons of, hedge against inflation and debt and all that, tax benefits, the nice thing with these owner finance notes is that principal and interest, I have no obligations. I get that P&I no matter what. I don't pay taxes. There's no vacancy. There's no property manager. There's no maintenance. I get that principal and interest. So it's just a way to like solidify the portfolio a little bit more where it stabilizes the cash flow. And then we have 3 short-term rentals, which is definitely not a passive investment like a long-term rental is. It's definitely more in the Robert Kiyosaki, the business category. You're running a business with short-term rentals. And so I like those a lot. Those things are generating a lot of cash, about 3 to 4 times the amount of gross income as a long-term rental. But you got to build systems and there's some work involved. So right now I'm generating enough cash where it's probably covering 3 times, maybe 4 times what my monthly debt obligations are. And we probably want to boost it up a little bit more. So ideally we'll increase our spending, another couple thousand more. Bigger house, things like that. But so we could potentially, retire now and be fine. But I still like doing anesthesia 2 days a week. Feels like just social hour when I go in, and I like all the people I work with. So at this moment, I still like it. But at some point, if you're making $60,000-$70,000 a month in passive income, at some point you're going to say, well, maybe spending time with the family. I have 3 little kids, wanting to travel and do some vacations and maybe focus more on just real estate takes precedence. But right now I can still easily do what I'm doing and work 2 days a week. I work full time. So it doesn't prohibit me when I do these because, like I said, I'm doing all the stuff from text and through emails and all from a distance. So I could do that on breaks or whatever when I'm working.
Yeah. Well, I love how much effort you put in at the beginning to create what you have. And now I don't want to say it's on cruise control because it's not. You still have to step in and do things. But in a sense, it's so much easier to handle now than it was a few years ago. And I mean, I think that's just a testament to how you've got things set up. So that's pretty cool, man. So tell us about the crypto thing. You've got some, you're taking your cash equivalents and you're keeping them in some cryptocurrency storage. So what was the thought process with that, and how did you end up with DeFi?
Yeah, so like I was in crypto back in 2017, and anyways, ups and downs with it, right? And kind of just kept my finger on the pulse, for the last few years, buying here and there. But really, it was just price speculation back then, where you buy it, all these white papers came out with all these use cases, but there's no real working product. Well, about a year ago, they actually had some real working products built on the Ethereum blockchain. So and so once I actually got to use those and see what they're actually about, I became very bullish on it, thinking, okay, this actually has real world potential. And now that larger VCs and hedge funds are all coming in, and that just kind of solidifies it. Now that more money is coming in, and it offers, like I said, real world use cases. So being a cash flow guy, I don't like to speculate on price. I don't like to buy something, even stocks. I don't own any stocks. I don't like to buy something and just hope that it's going to go up in value. Even though stocks have a great track record, I'm not putting those down. But I like things that generate cash because up or down, if it spits off a certain amount of income, I'm happy. And that's exactly what happens with crypto when you go to decentralized finance or DeFi. Is you can simply take your dollars. So the way that I do it, there's multiple ways, but you have to onboard from your bank account, right, from US dollars into crypto. So I onboard through Coinbase Pro, not Coinbase, Coinbase Pro, and then you can convert your US dollars to USDC, which is a USD crypto, or USD coin, and then from there I'll transfer it to my MetaMask wallet. Once it's on my MetaMask wallet, I control those coins now, and they're in my personal wallet. It's a web extension that you can have in like Firefox or Brave or something.
So I gotta stop you here because I have to admit, like when you mentioned to me DeFi, I was thinking that it was an actual platform, not that it was an acronym for decentralized finance. So, for everybody else out there that's feeling like an idiot, I still have a lot of work to do on my own. I want to invest in crypto, but I have a lot of research to do on my own here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of work. But like it's obviously you got to put in some effort, put in some time, and I put in like hundreds of hours into this in probably the last maybe 10 months. But like I'm so bullish on it though, and thinking it's the future for many reasons. The simplicity, there's no it's trustless as far as no people, no headaches of dealing with contractors and sellers and etc. That the last couple of years I bought 26 properties each year. This year I've only bought 3 properties because I'm just putting all my stuff into DeFi. Like I said, I'll buy properties when they make sense, but I'm just like, man, if I'm gonna go tie up, savings, my own capital, $120,000, knowing what I know and knowing the returns I can get a much better return with less headache on crypto. So DeFi, it stands for decentralized finance, and this is built on the Ethereum blockchain. So people have heard of Ethereum. Ether is a token that's built on the Ethereum blockchain. And so like essentially, like just to kind of give a quick 101 is you have like Ethereum, which is a blockchain, which is a public ledger, right? Which is every transaction gets verified. It's on this public ledger system, right? That's immutable, never went down, very secure, yada yada. So on this Ethereum network, all these different money Legos have been built on top of it to try out different financial ideas. One of them is, for example, is a loan that repays itself, as an example. But the main protocols are borrowing and lending, and then exchanges, just like you would think with a Robinhood, where you're buying and swapping things. The difference is, though, everything's built on smart contracts. And so once the smart contracts are verified and they've been battle tested and audited, and billions of dollars go into it, you can trust it a lot more. Newer protocols, you got to be careful with. But essentially what's happening is that if I'm going to lend money on this, and say I'm going to lend a stable coin, which is pegged to the US dollar, like the USDC. If I went on there and I lent out my USDC, the interest rate is based on supply and demand. So when people are bullish on crypto, people want to borrow the dollars and buy crypto and hope price goes up, right? So anyways, the return that I get might say 8.9%. And so I'm putting the money in there. I'm getting 8.9%. And I don't have to worry about a third-party person approving it. I don't have to get KYC'd or know your customer and be from the right country to get approved. I don't have to be an accredited investor. I don't have to have a certain amount of money. I don't have to even trust that the person borrowing it is going to pay me back, because it's all based on a smart contract. So as long as I can trust that smart contract and we know that it's good, there's everything else. That's why they call it trustless. So it's permissionless and it's trustless, and so that's kind of one of the core protocols in DeFi. And there's different borrow lending protocols, which are kind of companies. So essentially, you can go out there and you can go buy your US or swap to USDC, send it to your MetaMask, go on one of these sites like Aave or Compound, or 2 of them. They're called Web 3.0 sites, and in the top right corner it'll say like connect, and you have to have your MetaMask wallet open, and then you connect it, and then you give permission. You sign off for permission, And now you can interact with it. If you have coins in there, you can deposit them and then you can lend them out at whatever the current APR is. And so a lot of these things I lend to most protocols who need liquidity, and then they give you incentives as reward for that. And so what I'll do is I'll lend out my stable coins or my ether or something else, and the protocol will pay me in tokens reward. So then as I accrue these tokens, it's in real time. So say the APR or APY, and learn the difference if you're going to get into it, is say 200% because it's a higher risk thing. Okay. You'll see your value, your what you've earned, accrue in real time. Every couple seconds you'll see it tick up. And so simply when I want to collect that reward, I can click a button that says harvest or farm, and then that reward will show up in my wallet. I could then take that token to one of the exchanges and sell it back to $1 or ether, whatever you want to denominate or hold your currency in. And then if I wanted to cash out, I could simply send it from my MetaMask wallet back to Coinbase Pro. From Coinbase Pro, I could then withdraw it to my Chase Bank account.
Huh. Fascinating stuff. I love that. I appreciate you going into kind of the nuts and bolts of how that works, going from wallet to platform and to bank account. So I appreciate that. All right. So, Logan, a lot of information here, a lot of stuff that you've given our way. If people are interested in doing some of the things from, a real estate perspective that you have done, what's some advice that you can give to those people looking to get started?
Yeah. I always tell people, like, really determine if you want to be active or passive, because, I put more time into real estate than I did into anesthesia studying. So if you really want to be active, you're going to have to put in some effort and some time if you want it to be more like a business, which is kind of what I did, right? Found off market, did all these teams. It's definitely more business related than an investment. But that being said, it doesn't hurt if you want to invest. Sometimes just buying a rental house that's near you that looks like it's a decent deal, just run some numbers on it. Learn how to run numbers. It's not complicated. Read a few books, listen to podcasts. Within a few months, you should be able to just really analyze a real estate deal. And it's not hard. Look at the expenses, look at the income, figure out the numbers. And sometimes just buying it and taking that first step and having some skin in the game, that may lead you to have more interest and pursue things, because you don't need to know everything before you start. And that's what people sometimes fear. They fear that I have to know every little detail before I proceed. And that's just not the case. If you're CRNA or you're someone else, like, you're probably a smart individual and you can figure things out as you go, or you have resources where you can figure them out through Google or friends. So just know that, hey, you don't know what you don't know. Things will come up and you'll figure them out as they come up. But like I'd say don't wait. Just if you want to be active, buy that first rental. If you want to make a business out of real estate, you're gonna have to put in a lot of time and effort and studying. But like I said, if you don't want to be active, sometimes just buying some single family rentals yourself is a good long-term investment and a good addition to maybe your retirement or your portfolio.
Yeah. Very cool, man. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have some questions for you. How can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, I'm on the Facebook CRNA SRNA as well as like the Facebook group for CRNA real estate investors. So you can find my name on there, Logan Turner. You can send me an email as well. The best email is permianhomebuyer@gmail.com. That's P as in Paul, ER, M as in Mary, IAN as in Nancy, home buyer. So permianhomebuyer@gmail.com.
Perfect. Perfect, man. Well, Logan, it's been great having you here today. I really appreciate your time talking shop with us, and, best of luck to you in the future, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Bobby. Appreciate it.
This conversation brought to mind one of my favorite quotes by Louis Pasteur: "Chance favors only the prepared mind." Logan had an idea of how he wanted to invest after graduation, but he diligently prepared for the moment when he would be financially ready to start. But the most important part of that was that he actually took action. He didn't get everything right at first. Nobody does, but his business was still able to take off. But even as he built his single family portfolio, he still had an eye to the future. Logan has slowed down his business afterwards so that he can focus on preparing for other opportunities as they come along. For him, that involves cryptocurrency and a possible move into multifamily. And if I were a betting man, I'd say Logan's going to enjoy a ton more success in the coming years with his investing approach. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you found value today, please make sure you rate and review on your podcast player or share it with your friends. That's going to do it for now. I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On-Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On-Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.